Thank you everyone for joining us for this webinar, AMX and NETGEAR, delivering NAV excellence together. My name is Laurent, and I'm the Senior Director of Global Marketing at HARMAN. Just a few things before we get started. Everyone on the call is muted to keep down noise levels during the webinar. However, there is a Q&A function where you can submit your questions to the presenters, and they'll try to answer as many questions as possible at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and the link will be made available a few days after the presentation. We have a number of upcoming learning sessions available on our calendar, which you can find on pro.harman.com, and we are constantly updating the calendar, so be sure to check on that weekly. And now I'd like to introduce you to the presenters for today's webinar. Laurent Masia, the Director of Product Line Management for Managed Switches at NETGEAR, has deep experience in networking and Pro AV. Laurent is also responsible for leading the Pro AV engineering services team. Laurent holds a master's in management degree from Schema Business School, Sophia Antipolis, France. John Henkel is the Pro AV Product Marketing Manager for NETGEAR. He has a background in AV with roles in product management and marketing and has traveled the globe extensively, including working 2 Olympics for NBC Sports and winning an Emmy Award with the team in Athens in 2004. Kyle Barron is the Product Manager for Network AV at HARMAN Professional. Throughout his 10 years in the industry, he has focused on the intersection between IT and AV and has held the roles of AV system designer, system programmer, network designer, network engineer, and most recently, technical trainer. And now I'll pass it over to you, Kyle.
Thank you. So welcome everybody for joining us for the networking engineered for AV over IP with NETGEAR. Today we're going to be talking about the network leadership and taking a look at the NETGEAR platform. But first I want to highlight on some key reasons that NETGEAR and AMX are working in concert. You know, some of the technology is so standards based that SVSI has a simplicity about it when it comes to deployment and install and operation. You know, AMX implements those standards in the form of IGMP, VLAN, QoS, DSCP, among other things that allow for the maximum reliability, uptime, and transmission across not just an enterprise network, but any network. You know, the implementation of these protocols within a network can be very frightening and scary for somebody that is not very familiar with them. However, NETGEAR has solved this solution in a multitude of ways with a lot of their new product. And you know, the ease of that simplicity for deployment is key and paramount to a successful operation of any network AV solution. The NETGEAR switches have been functionally tested and continue to be tested against all AMX SVSI product to make sure that they have a seamlessly no issues at all with themselves. The key thing here is that, you know, NETGEAR is an AMX in concert partner program member, and there's some more information you can find about the in concert partner program at the web link that is provided here. Next slide. So talk a little bit about some firsts in the industry. There's been a lot of things that have been out in regards to this, but you know, let's talk about some hard facts here. In 2008, AMX was the first, ASVSI was the first to ship a networked AV solution. Currently, we're also the first to ship a 4K 60444, as well as a 4K in both the compressed and uncompressed version. The SVSI product portfolio has a multitude of specific products that curve and can fit into any network offering and platform. We're also the first to ship some AV windowing processors, as well as multi-channel synchronous networked AV recording solutions. Next. So taking a look at a lot of this, total solutions, if you will. You can see here, low price, no latency network video recording, open standards-based control, super low bandwidth, are all different variants of the SVSI product portfolio that we offer. And everything is, at least, 8 years old, right? Current to date, just over 2 million units that have been sold into the market. But all of these features and functionality for the total solution, and what makes up that total solution is the network piece, right? It is the network switch that ends up being the core of the system, and that is, of course, the most important part. Next slide. So some notable projects and recent projects is the United Nations in Geneva, Switzerland, was a two-phased project totaling just over, the first phase was just shy of 500 units, featuring the N8000 controllers, G5 touch panels, Texas A&M and their innovative learning classroom building, which is a combination of N2400 series, the N2410 windowing processor. The Supreme Court of the United States was another one for 2400 and 2410. University of Nebraska, which features our N2300 series. Georgia Tech just brought a brand new living building online a little while ago, and that features N1000 series. Very impressive install. The South Point Casino, located in Las Vegas, is N2400 and some 2410s. And CQ University in Australia, featuring N1000s. These are just a few of the overall projects that I've mentioned. There is, tens and tens and tens of more of projects that are out there featuring SVSI because of its reliability, ease of use, ease of deployment, no nonsense, functionality that exist. So with all of this, we're going to talk about the network switch, the network piece. And for that, I would like to throw it over to my friend that I've gotten to know, John from NETGEAR.
Thanks very much, Kyle. Those are some awesome projects, and we look forward to a lot of those together, and to be able to talk about these to the world, some of these great case studies together with you guys. It's been a really good partnership, and I know a lot of you probably know the NETGEAR brand, but I just want to run through a few things about NETGEAR, and then certainly show you our product offerings. And then my good friend Laurent Masia is going to then show you this live. So we'll actually get in live and show you how the new NETGEAR switches work. So it'll be very exciting. Thank you for being here. We're very excited to be here and be a part of this webinar with you. So sit back and enjoy. Some of the things, NETGEAR's been around for 25 years. This is our 25th year, and you've probably known of us from those little small blue switches or purple switches along the way, whatever color they were. Everybody's had one at some point in their home or business, and now we've moved into the Pro AV space, so you're hearing us from that realm as well. Some of the key technology inflections and maybe some new categories you didn't know that we are into, the mesh Wi-Fi, all these have grown, of course, with everybody working from home lately too, but certainly AV over IP is a core focus for the company. And internally, we hear that all the time. Besides the Wi-Fi, of course, work from home, but Pro AV is a huge focus for us. And that's something that the company is putting a lot of effort into, hence our being here today with you. We have a dedicated Pro AV team you might not have known about that Laura mentioned. Laurent is director of that design engineering team. They're located around the world. So no matter where you are or where your installation is located, you'll have someone not that far away for help on your jobs. We help design your systems for you. A lot of AV people don't know network design, so Laurent has built a great team of people who've been around and they've probably done that kind of job before. So the other great thing about this team is that product management, Laurent's on the list, as well as engineering staff. So they're copying in all these emails. and they can see what's happening in the field and make improvements to the products if needed throughout the lifetime. And that's a huge benefit, I think, to you guys for getting products that are actually tailored for what you need. And no other networking company is going to give you that kind of attention besides NETGEAR, for sure. And aside from the Pro AV design team, we also have, I think, an unmatched level of support, which includes a limited lifetime warranty on our switches, next business day replacement. We know if you're out there in the field and something happens, delivery problem or some other failure, we can get you that next business day replacement in most parts. We also have a pretty active online community to get help from people who've been there before on our website, as well as that Pro AV engineering team. So I think we give you a lot of things besides just that hardware and software. We certainly have quite a few switches we've targeted for Pro AV with a range of sizes and shapes, and we'll go over some of the details here. Of course, you can find all the info on our website. There are some unique features we have, and our new AV GUI we're going to show you, and we're pretty cool. We're pretty happy with that, and we'll show you that coming up. Basically, we have three model groups that are the new AV line of M4250 switches, just came out in September, and the M4300 and the M4500. Those are the three basic models of our managed switch line that we offer for Pro AV. So just some basic specs. I know it's not a ton of things on this page, but a lot of stuff. We'll just run over the ideas. These are the 1G versions of the M4300 switches. Notice that with the models that have a PA and a PB version on the end of it, you can purchase a larger or a second power supply and get a higher POE budget. So that's how we do things in NETGEAR. The PA or PB is the indicator for more power for POE if you need it. We move up to the 10G models of the 4300 line. You'll see a variety of configurations. Now, one thing to note here in the form factor row is that all of these, the 10Gs, are half rack width. So you can mount two in a single RU, which is pretty nifty. If you need to add a second switch, it's pretty easy to do that way, or a different configuration. All of these in this portfolio are half width, and that's a pretty cool thing. And then a few more of the 10G models in the 4300s and up to the 4500 line that go up to 100 gigs per port. So we provide a great deal of flexibility, especially with this switch, the M4396X. With up to 96 ports in a single 2U chassis. And I want to take a quick look at that one. That is looks something like this, and it's modular. I think it's one of a kind in the field. Definitely the most versatile switch around, handling just about any speed you can put at it, plus POE plus if you need it. So you can simply add modules. There's a range of input types in copper, fiber. It's also stackable with other M4300 switches or the M4300 switches. So you can certainly add another switch if you need to. And the cool thing about this is you can buy the switch chassis, of course, and then in the future, when your customer needs to upgrade or something, add more ports, you just plug in a new card. That's a really simple thing to do, and then they're future-proofed. You don't have to go find more space in the rack for another switch. You can just plug in a new module. And there's even an online configurator to figure out what modules you need and what speed, fiber, or copper ports. So that's a pretty cool switch. That's our M4396X. And then for something completely different now, we talk about the all-new AV line of M4250 switches. I'm not sure how well the video is playing through the Zoom, but you'll see these switches are literally built from the ground up with input from the Pro AV community. So they look very different from any other NETGEAR switch. In the front, you have the sleek black display panel with some status information, and that's it. Very clean, nothing else. And we've turned the switch around so you can rack mount it in a typical AV rack, and it will look really good in that rack. Look like it belongs there, versus an IT switch that looks like it kind of shouldn't be there, really. This is our new AV line of switches. And you can see in the back, then all the connections are on the left. You have the out-of-band Ethernet management port, and you have the console ports, both the new USB Type-C port and the standard Cisco style RJ45 232 console port. In the middle, you've got all the IOs with standard RJ45s. Here they have a blue LED indicating the POE connection and the POE activity. Then you have the fiber ports, a couple of those on this particular switch. On the right-hand side, you'll notice an on-off switch next to the AC power jack. That isn't standard. Most switches don't have that, but obviously very useful if you want to shut the switch down quickly or just reboot it. It's very easy for that. Very useful added functionality, just a simple switch. And then I want to mention something else important. The LED information is present on both sides, the front and the back. And you can see in the back and the front, you have the power, fan, and the POE LEDs, plus all the individual port LEDs. So either side, it's pretty easy to get status info, whether it's behind a monitor somewhere or in a rack somewhere. Either side, you can get the status indicators. And that's a pretty useful part as well. Very handy for AV racks, of course, too. But wait, there is more. We have other types of things on this switch that make it pretty cool. Something you'll never have seen on a Luxel or like switches. These have a reverse mounting option. So the rack mount ears that are typically used on the front can also be attached to the rear of the chassis if you want to reverse the switch and have all the ports in the front. And then for small AV racks without enough room for cabling often in the front or the back, you can have a second pair of rack ears to recess the switch back about 5 centimeters, a couple of inches. Another pretty unique mounting possibility for these switches. So these are really useful. But there are a couple of more mounting options still, because we listen to the community, and sometimes you need a mounting hole, a threaded hole on the front or the bottom. These are for VESA plates. And I was going to take a poll on this call to see if you guys say VESA, VESA. It seems like it's all over the place. So VESA hole, right? Close enough. You can put it on a pipe or a truss, a C-clamp or something somewhere. So really, this is extremely flexible. These M4250s can be put anywhere. Standard rack mounts, VESA plates, or a truss or somewhere. We got you covered either way. No having to drill a hole yourself into the chassis, which has been done before. Another first for AV and IT industries, I think, is the M4250 now has software controllable fans. So you can take for instance, an AV installer who's going into a noise sensitive environment like a meeting room, a residence, or recording studio. With just one click, they can actually shut down the fans. You've got to pay attention, of course, to the POE utilization for power budget and things, and also the ambient temperature, of course. But still, you get 0 dB, fanless. That's a unique feature for us on this AV line. And then for other installations where you need to leverage the entire POE budget, and you'll see these are quite large POE budgets, we have a quiet mode, the middle option there. We'll always try to lower the fans to as low as it can to be as quiet as possible. And then if you really don't care about all this stuff and need it to be cold, we have the cool mode, which will be a lot of noise and a very cold chassis, but you wouldn't care about that. If you're in a rack somewhere in a different room, we have options for this, but the coolest thing is you can turn them off. That's pretty neat. So here's the quick reference chart of some of the stats on the M4250 switches, top level info. The first one, as you can see, is really the entry level switch, very cost effective, perfect for small installations with needing a PoE switch for those little AV over IP modules or dongles that don't need a lot of PoE power, but need something. And then we have a couple of 1G SFP uplink ports for that as well, which is perfect for aggregating those streams then. And then the next two in line there are better for video over IP. You might need a little bit more PoE power, up to 720 watts with an SFP Plus port for 10G uplinks. So even though the switch is mainly 1G, they do have the 10G uplinks to aggregate those streams further upstream. And then speaking of aggregation, there's a couple other aggregation switches in this series as well on the far right there. And this is just, I'll point out, wave one of the M4250, just introduced in September. We don't talk about products that are coming yet, coming up, but rest assured that we are hearing the marketplace and want more ports than just 8 or 10. So stay tuned for the AV line in coming months. How about that, Laurent? That's pretty good. Try to be political about that. A couple of cool things about these switches you may not know about that we've implemented at NETGEAR. If you've deployed them already, you know that IGMP is not the easiest to set up and doesn't always solve all your problems. Well, we fixed it with what we call NETGEAR IGMP Plus. We did this initially with our M4300 switches and M4500 switches, which solved the difficult equation of multi-switch installations using IGMP, which is not easy. So now with IGMP Plus, everything is automatic. It means that we're not flooding the network. Big problem often. It means that only the clients that subscribe to a multicast stream somewhere in the network will get the multicast stream, not everybody. So no flooding, no configuration, and no more IGMP deficiencies. So now with the M4250 switches, just like the 43 and 45s, they come native with IGMP Plus. It's pre-enabled in the default VLAN 1, but if you need more complicated setup or want to change the VLAN, it's simple. You can just do it quite easily, and we'll show you how with the GUI coming up. But out of the box, at least, they work for most all installations. So with IGMP Plus, you also don't need stacking at all. It's a thing of the past now, because stacking doesn't really scale that well across an entire AV network. When it's a smaller network, configuration can be still quite cumbersome just for that small network. So with IGMP Plus, you can deploy 2, 3, 10, 20, hundreds of switches, really, in a giant network with hyperscale, and have it totally automated with IGMP multicast distribution. This is something that Laurent spent a lot of time on to make sure we got right. So out of the box, you're given the configuration you need to succeed. Now we have some really exciting news. We haven't talked about it all yet, really, in public, about a couple of brand new features on our AV line of M4250 switches. Laurent's very happy with this. Spent a lot of work again trying to make this easier for the marketplace. Here it is, auto trunk and auto lag. So with auto trunk, we have a switch set up, let's say, with 3 VLANs, and the second switch we simply connect with a cable, and then the same VLANs are replicated on the second switch automatically. Okay, auto lag then allows you to set up 2 switches, and once you set up more than one link between them, then we automatically set up the link aggregation group, the lag. So you set up the auto trunk first, so a couple switches and everything gets passed to the second one, and the minute you add another connection between the 2 switches, then we'll auto lag that together. So those of you that have done this before manually know what that takes. That's a huge resource. So now the M4250 switches automatically configure all the interconnections needed between the switches. Okay, you still got to connect the cables. Okay, that's not too hard. But besides that, with IGMP Plus, auto trunk, auto lag, your deployments will now just work. Really, minimal configuration required. And Laurent's going to show you how to configure this and some of this more goodness on the AV line of switches coming up. With IGMP Plus, this is the ideal kind of application for these switches for the M4250s. You can build very simple star networks, configure the switches with AV profiles and several VLANs. That's all a snap in the AV UI. We'll show you. And then you can connect these switches to each other, and it's done because auto lag with IGMP Plus and auto trunk, it's all taken care of you. Yeah, so all the multicast complexity between the switches is gone. This is the main reason you're going to love these switches. You don't have to roll your eyes and rub your hands together and do a special dance and read a big 50-page manual how to configure the switches. It's going to be much more automatic for you, if not completely automatic. And that takes us to the point where we can actually show you this live, and that's where my good friend Laurent will show us the user interface. And we'll take all your questions. I'm sure you have several at the end. Let me go ahead and stop sharing and let Laurent take over for a moment, and he'll show you the goodness of the AV user interface.
Thank you very much, John. It was a great presentation. I love the way you simplify things this way. So welcome, everyone. Well, you know, it's usually better when we are all in the office because it's well organized with racks and all that. At NETGEAR, we all work from home for a long time already. So for today's event, and thanks to Kyle and the HARMAN team for the invite, I tried to prepare a good setup for you here in my home office in order to demo how exactly you should from now on deploy those wonderful AMX units. So we have a TV set with some HDMI in coming from decoders. We are going to focus on one M4250 switch together. This is the one at the very bottom. So this is one switch with 8 ports, and I have 3 cables with some colors going to those AMX units. And the goal today for us is to just, as John said, configure quickly the switch so that we can run AMX video over IP. And well, we will also put together some AES67 audio just for the fun, right, into an isolated VLAN ready to go. And then second step, we will take one of those bigger switches, and John said we cannot talk about future products, but we can show them. So we will actually use one of the newer versions of the 4250 incoming switches, a 24 port right in the middle. We will configure it quickly, we will connect it back to the first switch, and we will move the AMX decoder, one of them, up there to see if it works, you know, because maybe you don't trust us as of yet. So we will do that right now. Okay, ready? So let's connect to the bottom switch together. As John said, this is a web UI. My switch picked up an IP address from DHCP automatically down there. So it's the 184. I'm going to log to a very specific new user interface. Of course, the switch 4250, as any other switch, ships with the very cumbersome, fully comprehensive IT interface, but we don't want to do that. Instead, we are going to profit from a new AV UI. And this AV UI is really different because it only shows what's important for you in the AV install, right? So nothing else. And the welcome page is really simple. That's where we can actually put the switches in quiet mode or totally shut fans off. And here we can see that we have already some connections. The port number 10 is going to my network, to the rest of the network. So that's just a copper uplink. The port number 4 is actually my PC, the PC that I'm using with you right now on Zoom. And the port numbers 1, 2, 3 are where so far I just plugged AMX encode decode units, 2400s, okay? The first thing that we want to do, obviously, in this AV UI is to configure the switch in order to isolate the video over IP, maybe in a dedicated VLAN, all right? So let's consider this. Right now we have a management VLAN and all ports belong to it. The way we envisioned the new AV over IP configuration is by delivering a list of profiles that are totally pre-configured for you. So let's select the video profile, which is obviously certified by NETGEAR for AMX and reversely, and select this video profile. We are going to tell the switch, look, I want to include the first 4 ports in that profile. We are going to give it a name, maybe AMX N2400. The VLAN ID, maybe we can use the VLAN 24. And we are going to select a color. And because we want to be corporate today, maybe I could use a special trick here to copy the special HARMAN AMX color code. What about that? All right. So now we could stay like this, right? This is a very basic VLAN with the video profile so that all the video over IP for multicasting and all that is down there. But what if we could even achieve more? We could maybe use that switch to provide the DHCP addresses to those AMX units. That would be cool, right? And this is exactly something that usually takes a long time on a managed switch because it's really hard to build a DHCP server and bind it to a VLAN. So let's edit the IP settings. We are going to first assign a layer 3 address to that VLAN. We said that it's the VLAN 24, so maybe we can use a 24 dot something IP address, and let's use it as a 254, the last one, right, for unicast. Let's just give the VLAN a subnet mask, and see here you are going to be able to enable the DHCP server. We are just going to use this address as a router, and because if we need to have some internet connectivity, maybe better to use a DNS server that is in the rest of the network. That's it. We have set up our video profile for 4 ports on the VLAN 24 with a DHCP server enabled. We save it. Now, all right. Now those, the special code for the HARMAN color was not picked up correctly, so I have a light blue. Sorry about that. We'll do better on the other switch. So my first 4 ports now are blue, right? And they should be good to go for video over IP. And of course, we can come back in there and edit it just to check how things are going, but that should be it. All right. Now, what I would like to do with you is maybe just take the AMX Enable software and see what's going on here on the report. We see that we have 1 encoder N2400 and 2 decoders. Let's select one of them, logging into it, and use the LLDP function, which is great. And thanks to this LLDP protocol between the AMX unit and the NETGEAR switch, the AMX encoder knows that it's connected to the M4250 switch on the port number 3. So that's a good news, right? It's working. And now let's just check one of the 2 decoders as a safety check. Logging in there, going to the LLDP section, and this decoder is connected to the port 1. It's working. So now what we should do is take a look at the TV, right, on the display, to see if we can actually first relaunch the YouTube. The video is flowing. Let's connect to the HDMI number 2, where I have one of these 2 decoder. Of course, the encoder is connected to the video source, which is a Mi box, and switch back to the HDMI 1. We have the same source, but the second decoder is also connected all right. So luckily for us, we are now operating a AV over IP on the switch with a very, very simple configuration, just on those 4 ports. Okay, so I hope I did not lose you as of yet. I said that maybe because lots of those AMX units can support AES67 audio. They can even take the audio out of the video, de-embed it, and send it using AES67, or vice versa, taking another audio. So let's configure on the switch another portion of that switch on 4 next ports to do AES67 audio. Let's find the audio QSIS, audio AES, audio over IP AES67, the standard one. Let's select the 4 next ports. Maybe we can give it a name, AES67. As a color, why not some green color? And because it's AES67, let's use a 67 VLAN ID. For this one, maybe we don't need to consider it as a layer 3 VLAN. Let's keep it simple at layer 2, just for AES67. So far, we should have 4 blue ports and 4 green ports ready to connect AES67 audio devices. But what if our AMX encode decode units could talk to that AES67 network using a specific VLAN tag, which would be the VLAN 67? That's not a problem at all. We could actually go back to the video profile and tell it very simply, these 4 ports should be able also to receive AES67. So the right method to do it is to go back to the AES67 profile. We know we have selected the 4 next ports, right? But for the first ports, we are just going to tell the switch, you know, you might receive some tagged AES67 packets on these ports as well, the 4 ports from the video profile. And this is how simply you make sure that your video ports are not only capable of doing IGMP video on the VLAN 24, but also audio on the VLAN 67. Let's save it. All right, so now we have, well, achieved the first part of the mission. What if now we want to move? Let's do a safety check quickly. The video is still working just fine. What if we would like to move one of these encoders? Let's take the AMX Enable software. Let's take the pink one. I gave it a name, decoder pink, because I use a pink RJ45 cable to recognize it. Right now, this is connected to this little switch, 8-port switch. Why would we want to actually try to connect it to another switch? All right. So what we are going to do, I am going to flow back to the webcam. We are going to connect a 10 gig SFP Plus direct attach cable between the bottom switch all the way up to that switch in the middle together. Because right now this switch above, up there, there's nothing connected to it. It's totally idle, default configuration. So I just need to get back there and connect my cable. All right. Now we should see, after a small refresh of the page, another port connected. It's going to come. See, we have the port 11. So this is one of the two 10 gig ports, SFP Plus ports. And the beauty of it, as John said, and maybe John told us the truth then, there is a little A on it. It means that this is an auto trunk, right? Because the other guy up there is a 4250 switch that talks this language. So they shook hands and they figured out. So now if I go back maybe to my video AMX N2400 profile and edit it, I should see a logo on the port 11, meaning that this port is a trunk. So this port will carry in and out this video over IP for us. All right. So now let's connect to that other guy because this other switch is now connected. I should have a shortcut over here. It's coming in. Let's log in. This switch should be totally empty. We have the port number 29, which is one of the 4 10 gig uplinks on that 24 port switch up there. What we want to do, we know that the trunk has been configured, right? We know it for sure. So the switch knows everything, but we still got to tell the switch where we are going to plug AMX and 2400 units. So let's connect to the video profile. Let's, for instance, select the 8 first ports together. This is my AMX N2400. My VLAN ID is the 24. The color, let's see if I can do a better job this time. And no need to go layer 3. We can stay layer 2 because all the DHCP, all the layer 3 routing will come from the first switch. We just save it. And now we should have 8 blue ports. All right. So what we should do now together, we are going to disconnect one of the 2 decoders and connect that cable to the second switch. Let me do it right now. That's the pin cable.
Love that we can do all this stuff live right now. You can actually see Laurent connecting, disconnecting the cables. It's like a trade show right here.
That's right. That's not very often, but we really wanted to tell, you know, and show exactly how it is. So I just connected the pink cable to the switch above. So now one of these ports here, yeah, the port number one, it was the port number one, it's not connected anymore. This port is now empty. But of course, what happened when I disconnected this cable is that the decoder N2400 from AMX was shut down, right? Because no POE power anymore. So now it is certainly booting on this other switch. I connected it to the port number one. Let's refresh the page. Now I see it connected, but from my experience, a N2400 decoder will take maybe 1 minute, 1 minute and a half maximum to boot. So during that time, what we can do maybe, obviously we are on the HDMI on the other decoder right now because it is HDMI 1. Yeah, it is working. If I connect to the second HDMI 2, the window, the display is black because the N2400 decoder is booting. But with the auto trunk, with IGMP Plus, with this IGMP mechanism between the two switches, as soon as the decoder will come up after the boot, it will catch an IP address from the switch down there and automatically continue its mission. So let's see here on my video matrix. My Enable software did not really see as of yet that this pink decoder was disconnected, but let's see. I think it's coming. Maybe during that time, we can actually have a look. Hey, I promise I did not do anything. I think it's coming up. It is coming up, right? We are on this HDMI 2, and let me control HDMI 1, which is the decoder that stayed on the bottom switch. It's working the same, working back to HDMI 2. We have our decoder that was still subscribed, because never forget that this association in the matrix between one encoder and two decoders is based on multicast, right? Streams and multicast addresses, which has very little to do with the actual IP address on a TCP/IP unicast network. So absolutely plug and play. All right, let me put some more brightness over here. And it's working. So last thing I wanted to show, well, is probably the result. Let's go back to the overview page. On that, we can see that we have 90 meg per second of transmission. I'm actually streaming YouTube, so it doesn't take much in terms of bandwidth, especially when you know that my display is a 1080p display. If I go to my network profiles, I see that my port one of the blue ports is connected. If I go to the POE section, I might have some more information on that device. Well, that's magic, right? I see the name that is factored in the AMX unit, video EP, using LLDP with the IP address and the 17 watts almost of POE power. And now maybe, because I know Kyle is very meticulous, so let's go back to the unit management. My decoder pink, let's log in the 24.2 IP address and see what LLDP is saying now. What should it say? Did the decoder realize it was not connected to a 8-port switch anymore? Ta-ta-ta.
Drum roll, please.
Yes. So now the LLDP through the decoder, so that's the AMX technology, tells us that this is the M425026G, that's a 24-port plus some other stuff. And it is actually connected to the port 1, which is correct, the port number 1. So it's working. All right. So thank you for your attention. That's all what I got for you today. But we try to keep it very simple. Again, we have two switches, the bottom one connected to the middle one up there, really standalone. But see, did we configure IGMP? Did we configure the querier? Did we configure the uplink so that we could tell the uplink to act as a multicast whirler between the switches? We did nothing, because this is the beauty of the automation. IGMP Plus is taking care for us for all that. And now we have this auto trunk that is even facilitating it further. And well, I could actually add a second link, but I feel like I'm running out of time. So it's time for me to stop sharing. Thank you.
I can hear, Laurent, I can hear people, yeah, I can hear people clapping and cheering in the background. It's a beautiful thing.
That they are. We do have a couple of questions if you guys are able to answer. And if anybody has additional questions, please pop that over into the Q&A box. The first question is asking, is there a way to control a fan without the web interface, i.e. an API command so a control system can send the command to go quiet or off?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. So right now we can actually use telnet SSH commands, SNMP, and very soon API as well. We have delivered, if that can be of any interest, our API already. It's a cloud agent on the 43 and the 4500 switches. So we have API commands for that through HTTP or JSON or anything. And of course, those switches are new, so we just need some time to move and port the API agent into those switches. It's coming shortly this year.
All right, next question is asking, could it be possible to block jumbo frames between blands on the same switch?
Yes, so jumbo frames, for those who know, it's actually a setting at the physical interface level, right? So out of the box, the switches are capable of jumbo frames or not. Doesn't really matter. You just need to tell the switch, I want jumbo frames. So for instance, 9K, 9 kilobytes. And after that, if you want to enable jumbo frames on the blue ports for AMX and 2400, you do it. And if you want to disable jumbo frames because you have a very picky other type of protocol like NDI or other stuff, I don't know, you could actually deactivate jumbo frames on the green ports. Doesn't matter to the switch.
Laurent, I forget if those are enabled by default, jumbo frames, or not.
That's an excellent question. Jumbo frames are enabled by default on the 4300s and the 4500s. We launched 4250 switches in September, as you said, the little ones, right? The 8 ports. And we did not do that because a lot of other manufacturers, like AVB manufacturers, like a few others, they don't like jumbo frames that much. So we said, okay, let's make it user configurable instead. But Kyle and a lot of other video over IP 1 gig manufacturers said, NETGEAR, you made a mistake. We heard it. And in the next maintenance release that is coming in February, that will bring auto lag and auto trunk, jumbo frames will be re-enabled by default in the 4250s too. Yeah.
All right, next question, is the 4250 PTP aware?
Yes, absolutely. So we really did not want to go to the other IT interface, right? Because it's typically an IT interface with hundreds of pages. But 4250 switches are PTP aware, PTP v2, IEEE 1588, transparent clock, end-to-end. All right, and of course PTP is not used at all for video over IP because AMX units, they don't need it. UDP is best effort delivery, real time. But for certain audio protocols like AES67, PTPv2, or Dante, PTPv1, it's good when the switches are PTP aware because they can stamp the packets and tell using PTP packets how much time the residency was in the switch. So we don't enable PTP automatically in the video profile because it doesn't matter. As soon as you enable audio profiles like AES67, like Dante, like QSys audio, then yes, the profile is enabling PTP for those ports specifically, of course, with the uplinks.
How does auto lag work with spanning tree?
So I would reverse the question and say, how do you think it works? So spanning tree is this loop, anti-loop system, right? And it's a great thing because it lets the switches not, shut down an entire network because there's a loop. So as soon as I connect a second cable, in the fraction of seconds I'm connecting a second cable, of course, spanning tree is shutting it down the way it should do so that there's no loop. Okay, so it's usually with rapid spanning tree out of the box by default, maybe 1/3 of a second. The port is shut down so that it doesn't hurt the network. And then when the port is in the disabled admin mode by spanning tree, the software takes over. The software shakes the hand to the other switch and say, hey, you're not an enemy. You're my friend, you're another 4250 switch, I know you, we are going to do auto lag together. And from the software, it takes maybe between 1.5 and 2 seconds. 2 seconds later, spanning tree is removed because it's not a loop anymore, because it is a lag, a link aggregation group. So that's the secret sauce. Just makes sense. And I loved when Kyle said, keep it simple, we try to keep it simple.
And that's the key.
The next question is asking, can you set up fast leave?
So I feel when I hear those questions that some of the attendants maybe would have wanted to see the kitchen, right? The other side, the IT GUI. And so of course you can, but actually the video over IP profile that we used for AMX, it's a predefined template with IGMP Plus, IGMP snooping, IGMP querier. Even if the querier is somewhere else, it's a proxy querier for that VLAN in the switch, and the fast leave by default. If for any reason you don't want fast leave, because when you switch from one encoder to the other in the matrix using your AMX Enable software, if you want to wait instead of having it instant, you can deactivate fast leave. But to the question, can you activate fast leave? It is pre-enabled in most of those profiles.
That's something I usually touch on, Laurent, too. You mentioned that there is a full user interface, the standard IT style interface available. It isn't like the 4250s are dumbed down with only that AV GUI. You have everything else behind it. So you can set things up one way and then go over to the more expansive IT GUI and change as needed and say that as you need to.
That is right. And the GUI is the same across all those M series, 4250, 4300s, and all that, really much the same. But yes, I mean, if you want to set up the DSCP queues for AES67, you need to go to the QoS section. If you want to set up IGMP, you need to go to the switching section. And I'm not even telling you where to go for the DHCP server, right? So it's more complicated. But of course, if for any reason you don't want to use this new AV UI, you're free to go with the legacy IT GUI. Auto lag, auto trunk, IGMP Plus is all available on that other side as well.
When you trunk to another switch, does the AES audio go there too?
Yes. So when we did the trunking, The auto trunk, because we did not specifically manage the uplink, right? We did not configure it. But the auto trunk is taking all the profiles, all the VLANs on the left switch and the right switch. So because we configured the blue ports for AMX and the green ports for AES67 in the VLAN 67, the trunk is trunking, that's its job, and the both profiles and VLANs are carried over in and out. We went fast for that demo, so I did not take the time to put some green ports together up there. But of course, if I did, then the AES67 packets would flow the exact same way through the uplinks. And that's when you need to question the uplink and maybe add some more ports to have larger bandwidth.
Can we set priority for audio packet over video packets in NETGEAR GUI?
So the answer is yes, but I don't want to go into much more details. Video packets or UDP packets, low-level multicasting, right? So DSCP or QoS doesn't really apply. I mean, UDP requires, a line rate and its best effort delivery. But what we do using DSCP, what Dante Audinet is telling you to do for a setup, a switch for Dante, or AES67 is telling you, is that those specific queues for DSCP must be properly configured so that they go to the fastest queues, so that they go into priority should you have a bottleneck somewhere. And in that case, those packets are not dropped, and the other packets, if there's not enough room in the uplink, will be dropped. So the answer is yes, by just using the standard DSCP policies and queues for audio over IP.
And I just wanted to add to that, the SVSI product line has the ability to fine tune using DSCP and QoS parameters to specify better priority within those queues that Laurent was talking about for that video traffic to guarantee a quality of service across the network.
Can we control POE power?
This is fantastic.
Oh, sorry. Next question is asking, can we control POE power on-off through the API?
The answer is yes. You can do it today on the 4300s and the 4500s using our API, using some JSON or any other HTTP command. And you will be able to do that soon on the 4250 as soon as they ship with the API agent that we are working on.
And we are, AMX is currently working on an in-concert module to support the 43 and 4500 API, and then that will be expanded obviously to the 4250, as well as exploring the tie-ins for AMX RMS reporting for statistics on the actual network switch for a total view hierarchy of the network from end to end.
This is absolutely fantastic. This is brilliant.
So stay tuned for that, everybody, because it's coming.
All right, next question is asking, how do you block the multicast data at some port?
That's a good question. So we don't block, right? Because we expect those nodes. For instance, the AMX N1000, 1100s, 2400s, they are compliant with the IGMP protocol. So because they comply with the standard, the switch, by enabling a IGMP snooping, by definition, the switch will snoop on the streams and only replicate those streams to the receivers. If for any reason we have a not so standard node, and I'm not going to give you any hint or quote, then you can actually work on the switch in order to deviate from the IGMP snooping, not under EVUI, because all those profiles are certified with the list of manufacturers it's proven with. But in the IT GUI, we can actually tell the switch not to do IGMP on some ports, and do either some kind of filtering or reversely. If, for instance, you have a Macintosh computer with a Dante virtual card on it, everybody knows that this Mac OS will not be super IGMP compliant, so it's not going to be able to subscribe, so your Dante streams will not be taken by the computer. Then you want to enable a MRAR mode on that port so that all the streams can be flooded to that port. So that's, we could go deep into such a discussion, but that's the reason why John spent a little bit of time talking about the NETGEAR Pro AV Engineering Services team, Pro AV Design at netgear.com. Of course, you have AMX as an organization and the partner program, but combined, we should be able to help you with all these questions.
All right, next question is asking if you can edit the profiles.
Yes, it's a French response. Okay, so when you are in a so-called predefined template profile, take the video profile, you cannot, right? Because it's predefined and it was approved by Kyle, so you don't want to touch it. Now, if you don't trust that profile, you can actually create a profile from scratch in this AV UI, and then you will check all those boxes. IGMP, yes, no. DSCP, yes, no. PTP, yes, no, and so on, and configure your preferred profile. But, well, I don't see at this stage much use cases that would require that.
Next question, does 4200 series support PIM dense or PIM sparse or both?
Both. So despite the 4250 switches are designed to be cost-effective 1G switchers for AV system installers who maybe don't want to pay the price of a fully featured big pizza box like a 4300 with redundant PSUs and all that. It's still a very good silicon inside enterprise class, layer 3. So PIM sports mode, PIM dense mode, and source-specific multicast, SSM as well. So we have the 3 flavors, can be associated with unicast routing, being static routes, all automatic, or whip. So the difference between the 4250s and the 4300s is that there's no OSPF, unicast routing, on the 4250. If you really need PIM based on OSPF unicast routes, you'll go M4300s instead.
Is IGMP Plus configured out of the box?
You guess. Yes, it is. So because we wanted to provide, a plug-and-play solution for AMX units, it means that the default VLAN 1, which is, the open bar VLAN 1 for management of the switch, all ports are in there. Inside that VLAN 1, you have actually 2 things. You have IGMP Plus and you have AES67 and Dante combined. So it means that you can plug and play, because there's no need of coloring the ports in blue and do anything. It can be used as an unmanaged switch. Of course, if you want to scale, if you want to cut your switches into smaller pieces to contain the broadcast domain, or to do some audio on dedicated audio because your customer, your client got a AES67 VLAN already, then you will need to switch off, right, and create those additional VLANs. But out of the box, IGMP Plus is working. It means that if you have, Kyle said that those projects he was mentioning with dozens or potentially hundreds of AMX endpoints, potentially if you only have AMX endpoints and you are building a 128 by 128 install, you can actually take all those switches, connect them together using a 10G spine, better, right, for those 1G streams, and don't touch it. VLAN 1 IGMP Plus will take care. Yeah.
For display array, do we need special configuration in switches?
I'm afraid I did not get your question. Pardon my French. The display rate? Sorry.
Display array.
Oh, yeah. There is absolutely nothing to do for the switch. Everything is managed by AMX. And by configuring the decode units, the decoders know which portion of the multicast stream take and how they can, coexist together. So from a switch standpoint, this is absolutely not managed. You don't build a wall or any array on the switch. You do it using a video wall
We use it,
software.
yeah, for AMX, it's being used by the crop, pan, and zoom functionality of the decoder. We can isolate a specific portion of that image, as well as, the AMX SVSI brand has wall processors for the dedicated series outside of its 2300 series, but all the other ones have wall processors for them.
That's a great question. So this magic doesn't happen on the switch. This is all AMX magic.
Okay, looks like another question came in. How does IGMP Querier work on LAG or stack mode, auto or manual?
This is automatic. So you need to allow me for maybe another 2 minutes, I'm afraid, because the Querier, the quirky Querier, it's a big topic. So put it simply, all the switchers are, configured by default with a dummy address for the Querier, which is 0.0.0.0. So that's the simplest. So that the switchers, all the switches, they will talk with each other and elect a Querier. And usually, in order to keep it simple and automatic, the switch you want your Querier on must be the switch with the lowest IP address so that it will win the election. So that usually that should be the core switch, right? In my example, I had a 37 and I had a 84. So the 37 IP address management VLAN switch should be automatically the Querier. So when you have that Querier, automatically the other switches will just, use that Querier. But the IGMP Plus will never send any video multicast stream or any multicast to the Querier until you have a subscriber that needs it somewhere else. So the magic about the IGMP Plus is that we removed that ancient need for IGMP to send and flood everything from the edge of the network to the core where the Querier usually is. That's what IGMP does, and for it we use IGMP proxy techniques on every single switch.
Okay, it looks like that was the last question to come in, so perfect timing. Thank you so much, John and Laurent, for presenting, and Kyle for moderating on the Harman side. Definitely appreciate that. This is great information. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we will have this out on our channels in about 3 days. So if you wanted to go back and review anything or share this with a teammate, we will have the recorded session available for you. We also do have some upcoming sessions on our calendar. So if you want to check that out, go to pro.harman.com, and we're continuously adding, so keep checking back. Thanks again, guys. We really appreciate it, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.